everybody, Josh Sigurdson, World Alternative Media here, and of course we're joined by author and economic analyst here at WAM, John Sneisen. And I should have opened it by going, hello down under. We are here in Paso Robles, California, another place with nice weather, much like Australia, but the storm is coming. We're in a place with vast amounts of debt, and Australia has vast amounts of debt, and there's this new story that's coming out of abc.net.au, which says, Reserve Bank says rate cuts and QE possible as Australian housing enters uncharted territory. And as the article goes into, for many months, the Reserve Bank has told us the next move in interest rates is likely to be up, albeit not for some time. And the key points of the article say low unemployment coinciding with a steady economy and falling housing prices is uncharted territory. Benchmark interest rates has stayed at the record low 1.5% since August 2016. A rate cut would sink the Australian dollar well below US 72 cents. There's a lot going on here. It says, but in a speech to a business economist dinner on Thursday night, not only did the bank's deputy governor say further rate cuts were possible, but also that the RBA could engage in quantitative easing, known as QE, like the US Federal Reserve did to assist the recovery from the global financial crisis if it was needed. Guy Debelle's comments came a day after surprisingly weak GDP figures showed a notable slowdown in Australia's economy during the third quarter. So we could go deep into this article, but let's just talk about this for a second, John. I find it interesting that we've gotten to this point where everything is just made out of debt, made out of manipulation, made out of garbage. The housing market in Australia is not doing well. As we talk here, I'm going to move my camera so we're more in the sun. This is all part of winging a video and not, having anything planned. But anyway, we're in the sun now. It looks like we're good. Yeah, we're good. So John, what do you think about this recent move regarding QE in Australia and this massive housing bubble that we're seeing burst?
Well, I don't think they've learned from looking at the United States, ECB, Bank of Japan. They've been printing so much money and doing this quantitative easing everywhere around the world, and now they're back into crisis territory in all those places. Like, why is Royal Bank of Australia Reserve Bank of Australia, I should say Royal, is probably controlled by Queen anyways, but...
All right, Coke crap.
No, but it's they're doing the same thing that have mistakenly been made and done other places. So why are you gonna continue to buy up all these assets? Well, that's the only thing they really have, because again, I like to mention Ben Bernanke's speech in 2002. He's like, we just got to buy more assets and buy as much assets as we can, print as much money as we can to avoid deflation, because that's the number one point here. When you hit deflation makes debt a lot more expensive, and inflation makes it cheaper. So that's why they need constant inflation. They need constant more money coming into the economy. They need everybody to be more indebted. And when housing prices and everything falls, people are not being able to afford. And of course, the massive housing bubble in Australia, where everybody's selling and trying to make a profit because everything was going up and going up and going up for almost 28 years. People believe that that's going to continue, but now it's not, and they're really panicking over there. Of course, I highly suggest I did a report, a 49-page report on the Australian economy, and I highly suggest you take a look at that, where I go into the banks in Australia, their cash to deposit ratios. I go into the deposit insurance, which is terrible in Australia. All this kind of goes into this quantitative easing move, trying to prop up the system in order to avoid all this massive collapse that's coming in the economy. So I highly suggest, if you want to get that report, just send an email to me at john@theeconomictruth.org, or just send me $10 to my PayPal account, which is the same, and then I'll send that report to you, because I think it'd be valuable information for you to go to get now when you see the moves that are happening in Australia.
Just make sure to give your information when you send that to his PayPal, so that he knows where to send it. But I'm going to continuously move here, and hopefully we'll be good. John, let's get into the sun a bit more. All right, we got the sun moving. It's almost like the Earth is a globe or something. But anyway, so I think this is really incredible when we see the repeat of something we've seen so many times before, back in 2007, 2008 in the United States, for example, the collateralized debt obligation, credit default swaps, mortgage-backed securities, subprime mortgages, all this lending, all this debt, all this debt slushing around, as you mentioned.
On top of that, right? Like you just literally financing, like you're financializing debt now. You're creating all these debt instruments on top of the debt instruments. It's just ridiculous. But they're doing this in order to prop up the system so they could continue to make it look like the economy is okay.
Well, and I remember for so long people said the Australian housing markets are never going down. You guys are fear-mongering when we talked about it, because we talked about how insanely bubbled it was, and now it's coming down. How much is it down now, John?
Well, it's down, I think on an average it's down, it depends, but it's down between 5% to 10-15% depending on where you are in some of the major cities.
Sydney, Perth, Melbourne.
Sydney, Perth, Adelaide, there's a couple other ones that we probably, Melbourne, others that we not mentioning, but I heard in Tasmania, there was a guy actually approaching me from Tasmania. He said that right now in Tasmania, prices were up some places. I was looking at the numbers because he was asking me, and he was saying that they were up about almost 20+% some places over there year over year. And it's like, is it time to actually exit out of the market? So like, well, it's my opinion, but it kind of looks and smells like something is not that well when you suddenly have the housing market go up 25% in a year.
This is a cartel, man. I mean, like it's so ridiculous because they keep propping it up, and it's like what we saw before, but every single time it gets worse. It continuously gets worse because they prop it up more. There's more centralization. There's more manipulation, and then everyone goes, "Oh no, we've lost everything. What can we do?" Well, maybe the government will bail us out. Maybe the government will help us. And it's like, well, but the government and the banks and all these huge lenders have created this problem in the first place. So let's get them on board to do the same thing all over again to save us from the same thing that they just did. It's so insane, John. It's repeating the same thing over and over again, expecting different results. And Australia is one of the biggest victims at this moment of this. We see this in China as well right now, where we see 50 million empty homes and apartments in the country of China. And I mean, that happened before. This isn't old news. It's old news and new news because it's happening again. And what can people in Australia do about this massive issue?
Well, first of all, like just to explain the reason why housing prices are going up, why stock prices on the ASX is going up, it's because they need to prop those up because that's where people feel that they have wealth. They believe that their house is an asset. It's not. It's usually a liability. If it takes more money out of your pocket than it brings into your pocket, it's definitely a liability. Yeah. And people don't understand that. They believe that that is going to be their retirement. A lot of people, if I looked at stats and I showed them in my book, Canada, the greatest economy in the world, where you actually have the poor, mostly the middle class, most of their assets is their house. It's ridiculous. And people believe that that's going to, bring on to the retirement. There's never going to be a downturn. But where did they learn this? Like, there's been so many ups and downturns in the economy over the last, 50 years, just 50 years. And then not to talk about the last 1,000 years, how many crazy, cycles there's been. People are not understanding that something could go wrong here, and that you shouldn't probably trust the banksters that are running the game.
Yeah. Well, I think it's really important that we talk about some solutions here because there are more solutions than there are problems. And I think it's really important that people look to decentralize themselves, look to ways to be self-sustainable and independent and financially responsible and educated, because an educated populace is a responsible populace. A responsible populace is a free populace. Freedom and responsibility, hand in hand, folks. So individuals have to look to, as I always mention, John, food, water, shelter, self-defense. You're not gathering things for the toughest guy on the block. And of course, gold. Well, actually, that's kind of difficult in Australia, but nonetheless, I mean, it should happen.
Sorry to interrupt you there, Jasper. Actually, the Reserve Bank of Australia is selling gold. That's in my report, by the way. I talk about that. Like, that's insane. They're selling the gold, but Australia is actually one of the biggest gold producers in the world. And they're selling all their gold. They're like completely stupid. Like, Australians, please, start to accumulate some gold and keep it around just to protect your wealth.
Don't beg Turnbull to help you. It's going to come from you as an individual. And I think it's so important that we mention, gold and silver, like you said, and then, cryptocurrencies that are truly sound, fundamental value. There's a few of them. Most are grid, right? Most are terrible. You have to look to the ones that actually provide some kind of fundamental value as a currency, as something that you could hold on to preserve your wealth, something that is truly revolutionary. You have to do your own due diligence, though. This isn't investment advice. You have to do your own due diligence. It comes down to you as an individual finding your own way, and that's what it all comes down to. We talk about the problems, we bring you the solutions, but But most of all, that solution that we tell you about, it's you, folks. You have to do this. You need to break free from that system and become independent, as all fiat currencies eventually revert to their true value of zero, going back to 1024 AD in China, and this massive centralization of the system that is built up to make you a debt slave, push you into debt servitude. Perfect system for them. You need to become independent of that. John, bottom line?
Well, bottom line is check out my report on Australia. I go in actually great detail, way more than we have time to do in this video, especially about the solutions, because there's lots of solutions that you can do to become more self-efficient and take care of you and your family. Educate yourself on money and economics and finance. Understand how the system works so you could mitigate a lot of the risks that are out there right now, because there's been so much money that have been printed all across the world, and it's not sustainable. There's just no way that they could keep this going. They believe that they could print into oblivion because the government is never going to go bankrupt because we're just going to print money into a hyperinflation to save the government. It's just an insane idea that these Keynesians have perpetrated all across the world, and we're getting eviscerated. And if you don't understand how inflation works, it's going to destroy you and your livelihood, because look at France, for example, what's happening there. That's exactly one of the things that's going on, together with the big government taxing you to death and strangling you to death. So make sure you look at solutions, and hopefully we can make a change over in Australia, because this is not looking good.
So basically, pour all of your money into a bank with less than 1% cash to deposit ratio.
If you get gold, put it in a safety deposit box. That's very important.
Of course, I had one of the major banks that are going bankrupt. Anyway, obviously don't do any of that. No. Thanks for going into this with us, John. And until next time, this is Josh Sigurdson and John Sneisen signing out from World Alternative Media. Find the truth.
Be the change.
Like what you see here, OM? Don't forget to check the links below. GoFundMe, Patreon. We can't do it without you. Any donation is very much appreciated, especially as we are so vastly demonetized and censored on YouTube, as these guys come in and flag all of our content as hate speech. Also, check out our Bitcoin address below, as well as on the screen for you to scan if you please. And also check us out at steemit.com. We're at Josh Sigurdson. It's a future of social media where you get paid in the upvote of your post in cryptocurrency. Steem, that is. So make sure to check us out there. Make sure to join us at Anarchapulco 2019 with people like Ron Paul, G. Edward Griffin, of course, Jeff Berwick, Vid Jedlicka. So many incredible speakers are going to be speaking. It's just a massively growing event. It is something you have to see to believe. So make sure to check it out below and save money on your tickets by using promo code WAM, that's WAM, and I hope to see you there. Also, check out our newsletter. As we are getting demonetized and censored and all that, we don't know what comes next, so we have an email, worldalternativemedia@gmail.com. Send us an email with subject line YES, YES, and we will include you in the newsletter, where we will continuously keep you updated. So until next time, thanks for watching, everyone. This is Josh Sigurdson signing out from World Alternative Media. Find the truth, be the change.
I'm sure you have already changed people's minds in your young age because you're involved, and I like that.